My name is Vincent Brooks, and the day my marriage finally shattered, I was standing in the living room of our beach house in Pismo Beach, California, with my wife's union rep sitting beside me. Rachel walked in first, laughing at something Sterling said, Pacific sunlight pouring in behind them through the sliding glass doors. She tossed her overnight bag onto the couch like she owned the place. Then she saw me. Her laugh died, and her face went white. "Vincent, what are you doing here?" Sterling froze in the doorway, and next to me, calm as a judge, sat Sarah Collins, our union representative at Chevron, holding a manila folder in her lap. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at my wife of 26 years and said, "Why don't you tell me again about this safety training retreat you're on?" That's where it ended. But if you want to know how we got there, how a quiet life in Bakersfield turned into that scene at the beach, then I have to go back a few weeks to when everything still looked normal from the outside and nothing felt right on the inside. I'm 54 years old. I've operated heavy equipment at the Chevron refinery most of my life. I know when a crane's about to throw a bearing just by the change in the hydraulic whine. Somehow, I didn't hear my own marriage grinding down until the gears were already stripped. Most mornings are simple. I'm up at 4:30. I make coffee, sit at the kitchen table with local news murmuring, and watch the dark lift off the Central Valley. That Tuesday in late September felt like any other. The air had that first bite of fall coming down from the Sierra Nevada. I was halfway through my second cup when Rachel came downstairs already dressed like she was headed to corporate headquarters. Nice blouse, makeup done, hair styled. "You're dressed up," I said. She moved around the kitchen like she was late, phone in her hand. "Big safety audit today," she said. "Sterling wants all the administrative staff there early." Sterling? I'd been hearing that name a lot lately, like a bad song on the radio that keeps coming back. "Sterling, the new coordinator?" I asked. "Yes," she said too fast. "The safety guy. He's really sharp." She poured coffee into a travel mug, didn't even glance at the chipped mug she'd used for years. "Working late again?" I asked. She hesitated. "Probably. You know how these compliance reviews go." The quarterly safety review had been 2 weeks ago. But who's counting, right? She kissed my cheek, quick, distracted, and was out the door with a "don't wait up" tossed over her shoulder. The house went quiet. We'd been married long enough that I knew her rhythms. Rachel used to sit with me 10 minutes before work, complain about traffic on Highway 99, ask if I needed anything from Costco. Lately, it was just hair, makeup, phone, door. Like life had turned into a hallway she was sprinting down, and I was just the wallpaper. I told myself it was stress. Yet people our age get stretched, thin. You don't jump to the worst conclusion every time your spouse is tired and glued to a phone. 2 days later, it got harder to lie to myself. Thursday night, I'd stopped at Wool Growers restaurant after my shift for Basque Lamb, swapped stories with Harrison from the VFW, and driven home feeling about as normal as you can. The house was dark except for a strip of light under our bedroom door. I was halfway down the hall when I heard Rachel's voice. "No, he never goes up there anymore," she was saying, low and serious. "He says the drive kills his back now." My back, apparently. I froze. There was a pause, then a little laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. "Sterling, will you relax? It's fine. He'll just think I'm stuck in some training conference." She didn't say "with you," but I heard it. She was talking about the beach house in Pismo, the one my grandfather's pension money had helped buy, the place we'd renovated ourselves one long Memorial Day weekend, swearing we'd retire there, watching sunsets over the Pacific. I stood there in the half-dark hallway a long time, hand on the wall. I could have barged in. I could have demanded to see her phone, started a screaming match that would leave us both saying things we couldn't take back. Instead, I backed away. At 54, you learn the difference between a bad feeling and a fact. Feelings can be smoothed over later, facts can't. The next night at VFW Post 1024, I told my buddy Harrison just enough to get it off my chest without using the word affair. "Don't accuse," he said, swirling the ice in his plastic cup. "Confirm. Once you throw those words out, you can't grab them back. Get sure first." So I went home, sat in my recliner, and stared at the framed picture of Rachel and me on that Pismo beach, wind in her hair, my arm around her shoulders. Something was wrong with the machine, and for the first time, I stopped hoping it would fix itself and started listening for where the grinding was coming from. I didn't plan on calling the union office. It just happened. Monday morning, I was sitting in my truck outside the Chevron gate, thermos in one hand, Rachel's strange hallway whisper still echoing in my head. I opened my phone and stared at the union contact list we all had. Right below the shop, steward was Sarah Collins, field representative. I told myself I was only calling to ask about Rachel's health insurance paperwork. Something harmless, something normal. But the second Sarah picked up, her voice told me this wouldn't be a normal conversation. "This is Sarah. Hi, this is Vincent. Vincent Brooks, Rachel's husband." A pause. Not long, but long enough to make my stomach pull tight. "Oh," she said slowly. "Hi, Vincent. Is everything all right?" "I think so," I lied. "Just had a question about her retirement contributions. She mentioned some big training thing with you this weekend, some safety retreat." Another pause, longer this time. "Retreat," she repeated, cautious. "For which department?" "I guess administrative. Rachel said something about a weekend safety conference down the coast." Silence, then a breath, quiet but heavy. "Vincent," she said, "can I call you right back?" She didn't sound annoyed. She sounded like someone who just realized she'd stepped into something deep. She called back 3 minutes later. "Can you meet me?" she asked. "Somewhere not at the refinery." That was the moment everything shifted from suspicion to certainty. Union reps don't ask to meet you secretly if it's nothing. It's like when the safety inspector shows up unannounced. You know somebody's been cutting corners. We chose the parking lot behind the Kern County Courthouse. That alone made my pulse climb. I parked next to her white Toyota Camry. She was already outside, arms folded, jacket zipped to her chin, even though the Central Valley air wasn't that cold. "Vincent," she said, shaking my hand. "Thanks for coming." She looked tired. Not the everyday kind of work tired, but the kind that comes from cleaning up other people's messes. "Is Rachel okay?" I asked. She pressed her lips together. "I don't know, but I can tell you one thing. There is no safety retreat this weekend. Not for her department, not for any department." The ground felt like it shifted under me. "I know what she told you," Sarah said, "and I don't want to jump to conclusions, but there have been concerns. Company fuel card irregularities, GPS logs that don't match reported over time, safety reports filed without my authorization." My heart thudded once, heavy. "You think she's involved with the new safety coordinator?" It wasn't a question. She didn't answer directly. "I think something is happening that shouldn't be, but I don't have enough proof to confront her professionally." I leaned against the courthouse railing. A few leaves danced across the pavement, scraping in the Bakersfield wind. Sarah crossed her arms again. "Vincent, are you sure you want to know the rest?" I gave a grim little laugh. "Not really, but I need to." She nodded slowly. "Then we'll find out together." It was strange, comforting even, to have someone standing next to me instead of everything happening in my own head. We talked for a while, careful but honest. She wasn't out to destroy Rachel. She was trying to protect the union members and maybe, in her own way, protect me too. We made a plan. Nothing sneaky, nothing illegal, just enough to confirm the truth. I drove to the school's first credit union on Ming Avenue and asked for a printout of our last 60 days of joint activity. The teller didn't blink, just handed me the envelope with a polite smile. In my truck, I opened it. There it was. A fuel card charge for $89 at the Shell station in Pismo Beach. Another for $67 same area 2 weeks later. Company fuel card, personal use. Rachel never mentioned either trip. I sat there a long while, reading the numbers over and over. It's funny. Betrayal isn't loud. It doesn't come crashing through your front door. It slips in quiet, like hydraulic fluid leaking from a seal you don't notice until the whole system fails. That evening, I made the 3-hour drive to our beach house in Pismo. It was late September, tourist season winding down, Pacific wind sharper. When I unlocked the door, something felt off. The throw blanket on the couch wasn't how we left it. The coffee mugs in the dish rack weren't ones we'd used last time. And when I typed in the alarm code, the one Rachel and I had shared for years, it flashed red. Wrong code. My own house, and I didn't have the right code. Apparently my wife had upgraded the security system. Too bad she forgot to upgrade her operational security. I reset it manually, using the backup key panel only I knew about. When the system finally accepted the override, I walked through the house slowly, listening to the floorboards, feeling each breath of the place. Then the landline rang. The old cordless phone on the counter blinked. Missed call. I pressed play on the answering machine. A woman's voice. Rachel's voice. "Sterling, relax. He never comes up here anymore." My legs nearly gave out. I didn't need anything else. But I still called Sarah. She answered on the first ring. "They're coming early," she said. "Just intercepted a text. They're leaving at dawn." The beach house felt colder all of a sudden. "Then we need to be ready," I said. Sarah exhaled softly. "Vincent, I'm sorry." I wasn't. Not anymore. The truth has a way of burning through fear. And the next morning, that truth arrived sooner than either of us expected. The sky over the Pacific was still gray when I pulled into the driveway of the beach house the next morning. The air had that cold, metallic smell that comes right before sunrise. Sarah's SUV rolled in behind me, her headlights cutting across the dune grass. She stepped out holding a thermos and a folder tucked under her arm. "You sleep at all?" she asked. "Not really." "Me neither." We walked up the wooden steps together. The boards creaked the same way they did 15 years ago, when Rachel and I first bought the place. Back then, every creak sounded like a promise. This morning, it sounded like a warning. Inside, the house looked exactly the same as the night before, but somehow more guilty in the daylight. The throw blanket still folded wrong, the faint smell of someone else's cologne near the stairs. Rachel used to hate any artificial fragrance. Now, the house carried the ghost of another man. Sarah set her folder on the kitchen island. She didn't open it yet. "Before they get here," she said, "you need to know something." I braced myself. "Corporate started a quiet investigation last week. Sterling's been filing fraudulent safety reports, claiming overtime for training sessions that never happened, using company fuel cards for personal trips. And Rachel signed off on most of the paperwork, probably without looking too carefully." She paused. "But if she knowingly approved falsified documents, she could face criminal charges. Union can't protect her from that." The words hit harder than I expected. Betrayal is one thing. Destroying your own career, your reputation in the process, that felt like a different kind of loss. I leaned on the counter and looked out toward the Pacific. The first hint of sun was breaking across the horizon, turning the water a deep reddish gold. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it just felt heavy. "You still want to do this?" Sarah asked gently. "I need to," I said. "I'm done living with guesses." We didn't have time to rehearse anything. No plan, no script, just truth. And maybe that was enough. At 7:18 a.m., Sarah's phone buzzed. "They left early," she said, reading the screen. "GPS says they'll be here in 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Technology, making cheaters easier to catch since 2010. My heart thudded once, like someone had kicked a diesel engine awake inside my chest. We moved to the living area. Sarah stood near the hallway, folder in hand. I stood by the sliding doors, looking out at the deck, pretending to admire the Pacific. I didn't want to be staring straight at them when they walked in. Those 12 minutes felt longer than entire shifts at the refinery. At 7:29 a.m., tires crunched on the gravel outside. Then voices, laughing. Rachel's voice, light, careless, carefree, in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. It wasn't the kind of laugh a wife uses around her husband of 26 years. It was younger, freer. It cut right through me in a way shouting never could. The front door opened. My back was to them, but I could see their reflections in the glass. Rachel in her white jacket, brushing windblown hair out of her face. Sterling behind her, carrying a cooler and smiling like he owned the morning. "God, this place is perfect," Rachel said. "I swear, Sterling, this is exactly what we needed." She stopped. Silence hit the room like a dropped hammer. I turned slowly. Sterling froze in the doorway, still holding the cooler. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. "Vincent," she whispered. What are you doing here?" I didn't answer her right away. I just watched the emotions cycle across her face. Confusion, panic, guilt, a flicker of anger, then fear again. I'd seen those expressions over nearly 3 decades of marriage, but never all at once. Sterling cleared his throat, trying to regain some composure. "Mr. Brooks," he said stiffly, "this is unexpected." "That's one word for it," I replied. Rachel stepped forward, voice trembling. Honey, I can explain. Choose your words carefully, I said, nodding toward the hallway. She followed my gaze. Sarah stepped into view. Rachel gasped, an awful sharp sound. Sarah, what? Why are you here? Sarah's voice was calm, almost too calm. Good morning, Rachel. Sterling. Sterling went pale. Apparently his safety training didn't cover this kind of hazard. This isn't what it looks like, he said. Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like, Sarah replied. Rachel's hands were shaking now. Vincent, please. This is all a misunderstanding. I let her talk. People reveal more truth when they're scrambling. She tried again, words tumbling. This isn't what you think. This trip is for work. We needed quiet time to review the new OSHA compliance procedures. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you worrying. I tilted my head. Worrying about my wife spending a weekend alone with a 32-year-old man in my beach house? She flinched. Sterling set the cooler down with a soft thud. Look, Vincent, man to man, nothing inappropriate is happening here. A bitter laugh escaped me. Funny choice of words. Sarah opened her folder. I'd hold off on the explanations, she said, until you both see what I brought. Rachel's legs swayed like she might collapse. Sterling swallowed hard, loud enough to hear across the room. But none of that was the real twist. The real twist came a heartbeat later when tires rolled into the driveway again, right behind theirs. Another car. Someone else had arrived, and that completely changed everything. The sound of another engine rolling into the driveway cut through the tension like a plasma torch. Everyone went still. Even the air in the room felt like it froze. Rachel looked at me with panic rising behind her eyes. Who else is coming? She whispered. I didn't know. I hadn't called anyone else. Sarah shook her head too, just as confused. Footsteps on the wooden porch. Then a knock, sharp, 3 times. Sterling's face drained so fast he looked seasick. Oh God, no. Rachel blinked at him. Who is that? Before he could answer, the front door swung open. A woman stepped inside. A woman maybe in her early 30s with dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail, wearing hospital scrubs, badge still clipped to the breast pocket. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were burning. Hi, Sterling. Rachel staggered back like she'd been slapped. Who is she? The woman lifted her badge slightly. I'm Jennifer, Sterling's wife. Silence hit the room, hard and absolute. Sterling shut his eyes. Jennifer, I can explain. No need, she snapped. Your phone's GPS app does it for you. She held up her phone. You forgot about the family tracking you, insisted we set up after you got lost coming home from the gym 3 nights in a row last month. Sterling looked like he was shrinking by the second. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Jennifer turned to me. Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. I nodded. Guess we're both in the same boat. She gave a humorless laugh. A sinking one? The room felt crowded, emotionally and physically. Sarah adjusted her stance, bracing herself as the situation spiraled. Rachel looked lost, searching for footing in a world suddenly tilting. Under her. Let's sit, I said finally. My voice surprised me, calm, heavier than I felt. I sat on the couch. Sarah sat beside me, folder on her lap. Jennifer crossed her arms and leaned against the doorway like she was holding herself together through sheer will. Rachel stayed standing, wobbling slightly. Sterling hovered near her, hands half raised like he couldn't decide between apologizing or running. Sarah cleared her throat. Sterling, she said, you and Rachel will want to hear what's in this folder. He tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. Sarah, we can talk about this at the office. No, she said, we can't. She opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, fuel card statements, GPS logs, time-stamped reports, dozens of pages. Rachel stared. What is all that? Sarah answered softly, almost pitying her. These are documents with your signatures, Rachel. Approvals for safety training that never happened. Fuel card authorizations for trips Sterling took here. Not to job sites, fraudulent overtime claims, thousands of dollars in company theft. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. No, I didn't. Sterling told me these were all pre-approved safety protocols. He said corporate had signed off on everything. Sterling cut in. Hey, don't turn this around on me. You signed the forms. Jennifer scoffed. Wow, that was fast. You always blame the nearest woman, don't you? Her voice dripped with the kind of disgust that comes from years of accumulated disappointments. Let me guess. Next you'll tell her she misunderstood what a weekend getaway with a married man means. Rachel's voice cracked. I trusted you. And I trusted you, I said quietly. She turned to me, like she'd forgotten I was even there. Her eyes were red, watery. Vincent, please, this isn't what you think. Then tell me what it is, I said. Silence. She didn't have an answer. I let her sit in it. For once in our long marriage, she had to feel the full weight of her own choices. When she finally spoke, her voice was a cracked whisper. I felt invisible after all these years. You stopped asking how my day was. You fell asleep in your chair most nights. I felt like a ghost in my own home. My throat tightened. I wasn't made of stone. I didn't stop caring, Rachel, I said. I just didn't know you were walking away while I was still trying. She shook her head, tears falling. I never meant to hurt you. I answered plainly. You didn't mean to get caught. Her shoulders collapsed inward. Sterling tried to step in. Look, everyone, this is getting dramatic. Jennifer whirled on him. Shut your mouth. He shut it. The woman had clearly reached her limit with his particular brand of charm. Sarah gathered the papers. Per union policy and company regulations, both of you are placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Rachel gasped. No, Sarah, please. My job? This is bigger than your job, Sarah said. Corporate will contact you Monday. Rachel stood frozen, tears streaking down her face. The woman who had walked in laughing was gone. This was someone stripped bare, but the story wasn't done yet. I stood. We're leaving. I walked toward the door. Sarah followed. Jennifer lingered for a moment, staring at Sterling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. Then she turned and left too. Behind me, I heard Rachel stumble after me. Vincent, wait, please. I kept walking. Outside, the cold morning air hit my face like a clean slap. Gravel crunched under my boots as I headed for my truck. Rachel's footsteps pattered behind me, frantic. Vincent, don't leave like this. We can talk. Please, just talk to me. I turned. She stopped a few feet away, breath shaking in the chilly coastal wind. Her makeup was smeared, her hands trembling. Vincent, she whispered, I made a mistake, a horrible mistake, but I love you, I swear I do. Please don't throw away 26 years. The wind pushed her hair across her face. She looked small, fragile, terrified of losing something she'd taken for granted. I stepped closer, not enough to hold her, but enough to look her in the eye. You left our marriage long before today, I said. I'm just finally catching up to where you walked off to. She let out a broken sob. At that moment, a car slowed on the street, neighbors out for a morning walk. They waved. Morning, Vincent. I waved back. Rachel turned away, covering her face, too ashamed to look at them. Humiliation hit her then, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet, soul-cutting kind that comes from realizing your world has changed, and you can't undo it. She choked out one last plea. Vincent, please don't go. I climbed into my truck. I already did. I shut the door. The engine rumbled to life, drowning out the sound of Rachel quietly breaking apart in the driveway. Sarah pulled out behind me. Jennifer followed us. We left Rachel standing there alone in the cold California morning, watching the consequences finally catch up. 6 weeks passed before I set foot in the beach house again. Not because I couldn't go sooner, but because I needed time, quiet time, to let the dust settle in my mind. When betrayal hits at 54, it doesn't explode like it does for younger folks. It settles into your bones. It sits beside you at breakfast. It follows you around Costco. It turns into a long, low ache you carry until you decide to put it down. Those first few weeks, the refinery felt smaller than usual. The guys on my crew didn't ask many questions, but you can tell when men know something's wrong. They offer you a longer nod, a firmer handshake, an extra cup of coffee without saying why. Sarah kept me updated, though I didn't ask her to. Sterling had been terminated after corporate finished their investigation. Turns out, when you're stealing from an oil company, they don't take it personally. They just take everything you have. Rachel submitted her resignation 3 days before her disciplinary hearing. They didn't fire her, but they would have. I didn't take any comfort in that. Not really. Losing a job at 52 in California isn't justice. It's a hardship. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, not even her. But consequences have a way of teaching what warnings don't. The day I filed for divorce, I stood inside the Kern County Courthouse, holding a manila envelope of documents. Sarah had referred me to her cousin, a family attorney named Theo Manning. Kind man, quiet voice, no judgment in his eyes. When I sat down in his office and said my wife was unfaithful, he just nodded slowly and said, "Let's take this one step at a time." For the first time since everything blew up, I felt like someone had put a hand on my back and pushed me gently toward the next chapter. That night, alone in my house, the silence didn't feel sharp anymore, just different. A week later, I drove back to Pismo. The leaves along Highway 1 were turning yellow and orange. Tourists were long gone. The air felt cooler, steadier, the way coastal air gets before winter starts drawing lines in the sand. The beach house looked exactly the same as it always had. Same weathered siding, same deck I'd stained myself, same front door Rachel used to push open with her hip when her hands were full of groceries. But everything inside felt different. Maybe because I wasn't hiding or fighting anymore. Maybe because the truth had already done its cleaning. I set my toolbox on the floor and got to work. Tightened a loose deck railing, fixed a squeaky hinge, sanded down a splintering windowsill. Small things I'd been meaning to fix for years, but never got around to. Around noon, I made coffee and sat on the deck overlooking the Pacific. Waves rolled in, steady, easy, not loud, not angry. Just moving the way they always do, no matter what happens in the lives of the people watching them. I thought about Rachel then, not with rage, not with bitterness, but with a kind of quiet understanding. We'd built a life together. We'd shared 26 years of routines and road trips and arguments and Christmas mornings. You don't erase that. You don't pretend it meant nothing. But you also don't cling to someone who's already let go. There's a kind of peace in accepting both truths at once. I stayed there a long time, listening to the water and feeling my heartbeat settle into something steady again. By the time I got in my truck to leave, I wasn't the same man who'd stood in that living room while everything collapsed. I wasn't the man who drove away while Rachel begged in the driveway. I wasn't even the man who sat in the courthouse filing papers with shaking hands. I was someone new, or maybe just someone I hadn't met in a long time. A man standing on his own 2 feet again. A man who'd survived something painful and walked out the other side without losing himself. As I pulled onto Highway 1, back to Bakersfield, I thought about something my grandfather used to say when refinery work got hard. You can't control who breaks your equipment, but you can control who gets to work on it again. He was right. If you've been through anything like this, if someone's lied to you, underestimated you, or walked all over the quiet parts of your life, I hope you know you're not alone. You can stand back up. You can reclaim what's yours. You can rebuild, even if it's slow. And if this story reminded you of your own strength, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, share it with them. Thanks for listening.